The United States and the Taliban back at the negotiating table for a ninth round of talks. Can the two sides achieve a diplomatic breakthrough, or does peace in Afghanistan remain an illusion? Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Negotiators for both the United States and the Taliban are ironing out details, including exactly when American troops will withdraw. The U.S. is also reportedly seeking assurances from the Taliban that the group won't harbor terrorists and a promise to hold talks with the Afghan government once the U.S. military leaves. All this as the death toll from Saturday's suicide bomb attack in Kabul targeting a wedding party climbed to 80. ISIL claimed responsibility for the worst carnage the country has seen this year. Well, there is lots to get to, but first I want to bring in CGTN correspondent Sean Callebs. And Sean, speaking of violence in Afghanistan, ISIL has claimed responsibility for this attack. How big is ISIL's presence in Afghanistan?
Well, it is getting more significant, and that is the concern, because as you mentioned, the U.S. Is negotiating right now with leaders of the Taliban, and one thing that would call for would be U.S. troops to leave, some 5,000 of the 14,000 troops that are in there now. After that horrific blast, initial speculation was on the Taliban, but it shows you what kind of force ISIL can be in that nation. It is really one of the most heinous attacks since the 18-year war began in Afghanistan. So much at play. The U.S. envoy taking part in the talks right now is hopeful that something could be hammered out between all sides. But the Taliban remains skeptical of the Afghan government and has refused to negotiate with President Ghani. I did speak with President Karzai when I was there a short time ago, and Karzai believes that now is the best chance for peace because everybody involved wants it at this time. The Taliban is weary of the fighting. Afghan citizens certainly are, and the United States has indicated its interest in pulling out of that nation and ending the longest war. But at what cost? The Taliban now controls about 50% of that country, and if it's going to harbor insurgents such as ISIL, work with them in some capacity, what would indeed happen once the U.S. force in that nation begins to wind down?
Sean, you were in Afghanistan recently. You did quite a bit of reporting from various parts of the country. You talked to ordinary Afghans. What were they saying?
I think everybody to a person is very skeptical about what can be worked out, because they all see these violent outbreaks, whether it's the Taliban, whether it's ISIL, and especially the women and young people that we talk to. They are incredibly concerned because any kind of progress for women in that nation under Taliban rule, they were not allowed to go to school. They were treated extremely harshly, and they have made progress in the last 2 decades or so. Would all that go away overnight? What would happen? And what would be the future of the young people in that nation? But clearly, everybody wants this cycle of violence to end, and if peace negotiations are going to go on, people are at least going to listen to them. Anand?
Thanks, Sean. That's CGTN's Sean Callebs reporting.